Hungry Dads.
Welcome to Hungry Dads, your guided tour through the delicate and often overwhelming balancing act between food indulgences and social acceptance. And now, as always, here are your hosts, Rod Budget and Hugh Gallen.
Hello and welcome to episode 11 of Hungry Dads. I'm Rod Budget.
I'm Hugh Gallen.
And tonight we're going to start off with Hugh. He has a bit of a correction/retraction from a prior podcast.
Episode 9, Rod was doing his review of 7-Layer Dip, and I compared his reaction to that of Violet from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when she was enjoying a piece of candy that provided 7 different flavors of a full course meal, or several flavors, and I referred to what Violet was eating as the everlasting gobstopper. One of our dear listeners, in fact, corrected me and let me know that it was not the gobstopper, but it was a piece of gum that was supposed to be several different flavors. So just wanted to clarify that. Thank you to our listener who pointed that out.
Hungry Dads! Now I want to jump into another flashback. Just last week, episode number 10, our spectacular Halloween special. You may remember one of my recommended snacking strategies for Halloween was to identify a cauldron or bucket of candy that one could covertly sneak over to and take, say more than your fair share. Well, I was lucky enough to spot an unattended cauldron as my family and I were finishing up our trick-or-treating on Halloween night. So I'll briefly just set the scene. We were doing most of the trick-or-treating with my daughter and wife on one side of the street, the side with a sidewalk here in the neighborhood, and I spotted the aforementioned cauldron on the opposite side of the street, kind of like a beacon calling in the distance. Things were still pretty densely populated, but most people were ignoring this house because it was on the non-sidewalk side, and it was kind of a dark house. It wasn't well lit, not a lot of decor, just a cauldron. So I contemplated making up an excuse for needing to go over there, but that seemed like my daughter and wife were occupied enough that maybe I didn't need to do that. And there were some other people in our group, so they seemed occupied. So I made some calculations and just decided to go for it. And luckily for everyone out there, I took my phone out and recorded the entire event. So let's take a listen. This is Rod the Ripper Budget. It's 7:48 p.m. Eastern Time on Halloween night. I've spotted an unattended cauldron. I'm not sure what candy is in it, but I am about to covertly go up there and try to get something. It's a pretty densely populated night, Friday night, as I said. This is risky. I'm making my way up the yard. There's definitely voices in the distance. Approaching the cauldron. It's Tootsie Rolls. This is bad. I'm just going to take a few Tootsie Rolls. So the first thing to note is just how incredibly out of breath I am from simply walking around the neighborhood trick-or-treating. That's one trip around the block, and I sound like I just finished a marathon. Secondly, it was standard size, small Tootsie Rolls in the cauldron. I think the genuine disappointment rang through loud and clear in my voice. I'm not sure if this was a product of it being later in the night and someone had already taken the good stuff, or if this house just left out substandard candy since they were leaving an unattended bucket. Regardless, I had a split second of panic. I literally didn't know what to do when I saw the small Tootsie Rolls. It was like, should I just leave? Should I dump them out? Should I just pour them into my mouth? I ended up just taking a couple and popping them quickly into my mouth, unwrapping them as I walked back, chewed them up quickly, and none the worse for wear, was not caught in a Tootsie Roll steal, which would have been doubly bad.
So it sounds like, just to cut in for 1 second, the calculation, the risk calculation you took seems to make sense there. You said it was on a dark side of the street, not well attended. So on one hand, it seems like good, maybe you wouldn't be noticed. On the other hand, maybe you're even more noticed. I guess I'll trust your assessment of the actual goings on. Now, you're right. The audio tells the story. You show up, it's Tootsie Rolls, absolute disappointment. You bear this risk, and now what's the payoff? Taking 2 pieces, I think, was a fine decision. I might have even gone for taking 0. Maybe that just speaks to my Tootsie Roll preferences. It's such a low reward that even the possibility that I'd be seen, a grown man with no children in tow, taking candy, I probably would have passed on the whole thing.
Yeah, that's honestly the first thought that flashed into my mind in this, 2 to 3 seconds that I was standing there is, don't take any. But then I was like, that looks even weirder, I think. I just look into the bucket and set it back down.
You know what? That's a good point.
Yeah, I think I came through in kind of that nanosecond judgment call. And it was risky. You can hear voices in the background of the audio recording. There were people around. There were enough that I see what you're saying. If there's literally no one around and I'm walking up to the cauldron, someone in a window is probably saying, "What's this guy doing?" But there was enough action, so I think it was the right call. It was just the wrong candy. And the only other follow-up I have from Halloween was an observation I had later in the night. This was after we had returned with the family from trick-or-treating. It was getting kind of late, but there was still a steady trickle of older kids, maybe 5 or 6 groups after everyone else had kind of called it a night. And it made sense to me that the older kids went later because, they stay up later, they have a later bedtime if they even have a bedtime. But then I noticed that all these older kids just had incredible amounts of candy with them. And then it dawned on me, as I turned to give them a huge pile of candy from our stack. Like I said last week in the episode, no one wants to be the loser house that runs out of candy, so everyone overbuys, and these kids have figured out that the later you go, the more candy you're going to get, because people other than ourselves generally don't want to have huge piles of candy left over. So these kids had like full-sized pillowcases. There wasn't a box, but I pictured it was bigger than a jack-o'-lantern plastic thing. I don't know what it was, but I was giving these kids like tons and tons of candy, and I think they deserved it. It was a good call on their part.
That's an excellent observation, and I think there's a couple more things that play into that. At least for me, I think that as long as the older kids are being good, and they generally were in my experience, I kind of want to give them a lot. I don't know. I kind of want them to think I'm cool. So I played right into that, and I had more to give, so I'd give it to them. There's also the factor that they didn't have the parental oversight. I attempted to give some younger kids lots of candy, and a couple times the parents said, no, 1 or 2 pieces is enough. So the fact that they're on their own, and the fact that I clearly am still trying to impress teenagers might play into that fact.
Yeah, I think the coolness factor is a strong point. That's something that I didn't think of immediately, but now that I go back in my head as the kids were approaching, with the little kids, they think you're cool no matter what. Like, you can give them a Tootsie Roll and they'll think, hey, that's awesome. But with the older kids, you want them to like you, and they're there to judge you. They're looking at the candy. They know what's good. They know what's bad. And you want to be the cool guy, no doubt.
Hungry Dads!
So tonight I have what I'm going to call a Hungry Dad special report. I want to open it with something that you said a few weeks ago, Rod, which was that a big part of what Hungry Dads does here is neither to condemn nor condone. And I think that's important to remember throughout this report. And what I want to talk about tonight is McDonald's. McDonald's has some new marketing strategies that are being put out there, and one that's in the headlines quite a bit that maybe our listeners have heard of is that they're going to have a new tagline that says "Lovin' is better than hatin'," which is an evolution of the long-running "I'm loving it" tagline that they've had since 2003. Now, McDonald's has a heavy cross to bear. They're the poster boy for the fast food industry, mostly for the bad. And we discussed this briefly in episode 7, actually, when Rod had ranked the unhealthiest fast food items. And we noted at that time that some of the second-tier fast food players kind of maybe had an easier route when it came to marketing because they didn't have to shy away from their unhealthy items. Now, how this kind of came to my attention, I was at McDonald's last week. I had to kill some time in the morning before I went somewhere, and I went into a McDonald's for a cup of coffee and ended up with a McGriddle and a hash browns as well. But while I did that, I actually logged on to use their Wi-Fi. McDonald's, at least where I'm at, have free Wi-Fi, which is a nice little thing. And as you log in, not surprisingly, the first place it brings you is the McDonald's website. The first thing I saw was this question: do our burgers have pink slime? And I quickly remarked, this is McDonald's own website. And that's when I noticed that I was on the Our Food, Your Questions section of their website. And I found this pretty intriguing. McDonald's has this reputation. It has this challenge. And from what I looked through on the website, it's fascinating that they're taking this challenge head on. They're combating rumors that are out on social media, and they're basically taking on the idea that they're the poster boy for everything bad. So I dove a little bit more into that website and this campaign. I'd like to share a little bit of it right now, actually.
Are there lips and eyeballs in there, Jimmy? At what point in the process do we inject the pink slime?
So that is an actual piece of audio from one of the videos that's on McDonald's website. And as you heard, it very directly asked some harsh questions that obviously are out there on social media. Are there lips and other gross pieces? Is pink slime used? And it's an interesting approach by McDonald's, possibly inevitable. As you go through the website, you see other questions like, what is a McNugget? One of the first things I ended up exploring was a video that talked about how a McRib is made. And I urge our listeners to go check out this website so they can see it for themselves. Let me talk about the first video I saw. The premise of this first video about the McRib was McDonald's found a guy who apparently had replied to a Twitter post of some kind about the McRib sandwich. And the Twitter post was a picture of a frozen McRib, and he responded like, "Ooh, that's gross." So McDonald's marketing people found this guy and plucked him out and put him on a video. And he shows up and introduces himself and says that he's a skeptic, a McDonald's skeptic. And so here's our person that we're supposed to connect with. They invite this guy to come to a factory to see the process of the McRib. And right off the bat, I think, okay, this is an interesting premise. This is pretty bold of McDonald's, I think. Then out comes another person who his name is Grant Imahara. I don't know if you've heard of Grant Imahara, but he is
I have not.
He is somewhat well known. He's one of the Mythbusters, or one of the. He's not. There's two main Mythbusters, and he was kind of this second team. Now, immediately, even though I know I'm watching a McDonald's produced thing, subconsciously and somewhat consciously, here's a factor of credibility that's being added into this video, and I thought it was potentially genius to add him to the mix. I'm not stupid. I know he's paid. I know he's part of their plan, and this is a McDonald's produced video. But nonetheless, there are absolutely subliminal ideas about his credibility that speak to me. In case our listeners don't know, Mythbusters was a show where they kind of scientifically, rigorously put different ideas to the test and proved them right or wrong. So out comes Grant Imahara from Mythbusters, and he's got this reputation for truth-finding. Despite the lingering knowledge that this is a McDonald-produced thing, and that Imahara's on the payroll, I'm somewhat interested in hearing what his take is. I will say, I don't know Grant Imahara, but theoretically he wouldn't grant his reputation to something completely bogus, or maybe he would. I guess that's the question. So as they go through the video, not surprisingly, Grant and the skeptic, they go into the factory that produces the McRib, and they see the process, and I'd say it's a pretty effective and seemingly credible account of things so far. They show the meat. They explain the cuts of meat that are used. Obviously, again, everything's carefully produced and edited. And that's where you start to see these hints of where maybe they're glossing over some details. And here's a quick clip to kind of illustrate that idea.
So, Kevin, I see there's a lot of things being mixed in there. What exactly is in there?
The only thing in a McRib patty is pork, water, salt, dextrose, which is a type of sugar, and preservatives, which are BHA, propyl gallate, and citric acid.
What are the preservatives for?
The preservatives are used to lock in the flavor all the way into the restaurant.
Oh, so that's how you keep it tasting like my grandma's barbecue.
We're following a recipe just like she does at home.
All right, let's see.
All right.
So again, that was an actual clip from the McDonald's video, and this is what I mean by you get these hints throughout where you're straining credibility, because as you heard in the audio, Grant Imahara, not from a script of course, asks, "Hey, I see a bunch of stuff being mixed in there. What is that?" And the factory expert says, "Oh, that's the only thing in the McRib is meat and water and dextrose, which is just sugar, and some preservatives." And our skeptic, again, certainly not scripted, says, "What are the preservatives for?" And he says, "Well, that's to make it tasty," or something like that. and then our skeptic goes on to compare this to his grandma's barbecue. And so it goes off.
I don't know if grandma was using the preservatives, though. I don't know.
It goes off the rails on terms of, I don't want to say credibility, but on terms of, its independence. From there, the group goes on to a quality control kitchen, and they cook up some ribs, and they make some banter about how they like their barbecue. And our skeptic tries one and is convinced, having known the process now, that he thinks the McRib is delicious, and that now that he knows how it's made and that it's frozen in that way and that it's all so clean and tidy, that he's a McRib fan. And that's pretty much the end of our clip. The McDonald's website is got several of these types. In fact, it has another video that I won't go into as much detail on because it basically hits the same beats. The question in this video is, what are our burgers made of? And essentially it's the same thing. They go into a factory, they see the process, they ask some direct questions. The most interesting one being, is there pink slime in here? And not surprisingly, the McDonald's people's answer is no, there's not pink slime in here. I enjoyed the videos. I think they were enjoyable to watch. And then I have to ask myself, were these effective? I don't know. I have my opinion, but I'll start, Rod, with you. I know you did some review of the website as well.
I was somewhat familiar with this campaign. I knew it was going to come out. I had read a few articles about it. I wasn't aware that it had come out in website form until Hugh informed me. But I focused on the chicken, which I'm going to call the McNugget section because that's really what they focus on, and the fish section. So for the McNugget section, they don't have a video up, but they have a pretty nice infographic, which I'll post on our website at hungrydads.com under episode 11 to make it easy for everyone to find out there. But the infographic I'll kind of walk you through. It starts off by saying that McNuggets come from tenderloin rib meat of the chicken, which this is standard amongst all nuggets. I know this because we buy them from time to time, supposedly the healthier nuggets that our kids eat as treats occasionally, and it says right on the front of the frozen grocery nuggets that they come from tenderloin rib meat. The second thing is McDonald's acknowledges on the infographic that they add a bit of skin and marinade. And I think the skin you could kind of tell is something that people kept asking about or grossed out about. I think it's something that, as you're picturing chickens being prepared to become nuggets, taking some skin sounds kind of gross, but when people eat chicken, there is oftentimes skin on it. And I think, why skin? It just says flavor, flavor, flavor.
We don't talk about the skin on KFC chicken. It all has, well, not all of it, but other than the skinless chicken, it all has skin on it. They obviously don't talk too much about it as skin.
And it tastes delicious, which I think is kind of a funny, like McDonald's said, why skin? It tastes good. Which I think, kudos to McDonald's for just saying it, Here's by far, in my opinion, the most interesting part of the infographic. Hugh, I'm interested to see if you knew this and get your impressions. There are 4 iconic shapes of chicken nugget.
Had no idea.
You've got the bell, the boot, the ball, and the bone. Which I thought it was interesting that they categorized one as a bone because that is unappealing, like thinking you're gnawing on a bone. It's just the shape of the nugget. I feel like they're all B's, so I think McDonald's is trying a bit too hard maybe to kind of come up with these shapes. But apparently this has always been the case, and I definitely want to run out immediately and get Chicken McNuggets now and see if these shapes hold the form.
Yeah, that I will say, I didn't know that. It's the kind of thing I would think I would know. I suppose the reason I don't know is because McNuggets are seldom my first choice, and I don't dislike them, but once I'm at McDonald's, it's not necessarily something I'm going for. But I'm glad to know that now.
Yeah, likewise. But I was racking my brain, like the last time I had McNuggets, trying to think, were there different shapes? A bell? I don't know. So I might have to get McNuggets in the near future to see if there are shapes. Just going back to the infographic and kind of their process, they go into how it's dipped into a tempura batter and flash fried. They spell out all the batter ingredients, most of which are normal, some of which are preservatives and long and hard to say, but I thought it was good of them. They just listed them all, being very transparent. And then finally it's shipped off to McDonald's where they are fried in a vegetable oil blend. And that's really it. They did have another part of the chicken area that emphasized no pink slime, which I think makes sense because I think that's kind of the main thing that got out into social media is the pink slime, so they're focusing on debunking that. Yeah,
now real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt. We've mentioned pink slime a few times before, and I don't want to speak of it as if everyone might know what it is. I had actually intended to do some better research on pink slime, but what it is it's a food byproduct that's created of various types of meat that are sluiced down, if I'm using the word correctly, almost liquefied into a slime, and it can be injected into food, into meat, to bulk it up in an inexpensive way. Is that a fair explanation of pink slime as you understand it?
That's as much understanding as I have, and I believe it's fairly accurate. So on the Chicken McNugget section, there's actually a picture of the giant pink slime in a factory somewhere, and they go so far as to say this is not a McDonald's image. So they're really trying to hammer that home. And the only other things on the infographic / section of the chicken site that I found interesting is they came out and said, yes, there is an anti-foaming agent in the Chicken McNuggets, which is obviously a response to a lot of social media stuff. People have been asking about an anti-foaming agent. They say it's something that's very common in a lot of food and fast foods and grocery foods. It's approved by the FDA, and basically it's once they drop the nuggets into the deep fryer, they don't all foam up and run over the top. And the only other thing that they called out was that they do not add hormones to their chickens, and as a matter of fact, quote, no one in the U.S. does. It's actually against federal law. So those were a couple of things they took head on in the chicken section, and I won't comment too much until I finish up with the fish. But I thought it was interesting, and they took things head on.
Yeah, I think head on is kind of the main emphasis that I'm seeing from all this. We'll give our commentary and reviews in a minute. Tell me about the fish, and either before or after you do, I'd like your personal thoughts and history on the Filet-O-Fish.
Yeah, we'll start off with the Filet-O-Fish and Rod Budget go back a ways. So I was a bit of a contrarian as a child, especially when it came to fast food and restaurants. I think I just wanted to be different, and I found things interesting. I was always a little bit offbeat. So when my family would go to McDonald's, I was the weird kid who would order the Filet-O-Fish. And looking back on it, I don't know why. I think I honestly just liked exploring. I've mentioned in prior episodes that I like kind of the fringes of the menu, and I'm interested in that sort of thing. And I think that hit me at an early age. So my family always kind of sighed and moaned when I ordered the Filet-O-Fish because, of course, there's no Filet-O-Fish ever prepared. I think the Filet-O-Fish has actually become more popular over time. Back then, in the 80s, I don't think anybody was getting the Filet-O-Fish. So inevitably, when the food came out, my Filet-O-Fish would be piping hot and fresh, and everyone else was a little bit soggy and the fries were cold.
Would they ever try to talk you out of the Filet-O-Fish, knowing that this is going to turn fast food into, slower food?
I don't have clear memories of anyone ever talking me out of it. I think they were supportive of me in general, so I think they were hopefully supporting my strange food choices. But
that's very good parenting, because I assure you I would be talking my children out of that.
Maybe they did, but if they did, I don't remember it. So getting back to the Filet-O-Fish section of the website, this did contain another video. This video I found to be mostly a fluff piece. It's about one of their Alaskan fishermen with some nice music in the background talking about his passion for fishing and the environment. I believe the Filet-O-Fish was much more environmentally focused because there's some concerns about overfishing, and it finally got into kind of a little bit more the nuts and bolts that the Filet-O-Fish is 100% wild-caught Alaskan pollock, which is pretty much what any restaurant, not any restaurant, but any fast food establishment uses for standard fish or fish nuggets or even fish sticks in the grocery store. There's nothing out of the ordinary about it. I found the fish section much less compelling than the other sections. Like I said, I think they were trying to put more of an environmental feel-good spin on it, that they're not ruining the environment. I think there are less concerns about the Filet-O-Fish in general. I think people think it's kind of a weird food to get at McDonald's, but I don't think it has the negative connotation of being low quality or mysterious as, the burgers, the McRib, and the nuggets.
Hungry Dads!
So we've covered the McRib, we've covered the beef briefly, and we've covered the chicken and fish. And I guess overall, like we said, this is McDonald's taking it head on. So I want to ask the question, did this work? Will this work? Is McDonald's doing a smart thing here? And I'll start with two premises that I think are true. One is that you're going to have haters who will never be convinced. And I don't think McDonald's is trying to convince those people. The other reality is that you'll have loyalists who don't care and don't need this kind of convincing. But there is a segment, I think perhaps they're on the younger end of the spectrum who haven't made up their minds yet, who might still be open to some discretion on this issue. And I think for them that this is a step in the right direction for McDonald's from a marketing standpoint. I think it's potentially a job well done. Is it manipulative? Yes, but not more so than any other advertising in my opinion. And I don't think it's outright dishonest. Have I done extensive research to be sure? No, I haven't. But I do have a sense that they would be foolish to tell outright lies in something like this because they would get caught. So I think the representations being made are true. I think they're head on. It's obviously being spun, but that's exactly what advertising is. So on the question of do I think this is a good idea and will it move the needle in their direction, I personally say the answer is yes. What are your thoughts on this McDonald's effort?
Yeah, I think we agree largely. I have a few more points. First of all, I don't think there's any way that anything on the website or in the videos is false or they're intentionally lying. I think that's just too risky, and I'm, as our listeners probably know by now, I'm perhaps the biggest marketing advertising skeptic out there, having been in the business for quite a while. But I think this is borderline brilliant, and I think it's the way that marketing is kind of moving in our new kind of social, technologically driven world. And it's hard to even think of it as marketing. It's just being forthright and forthcoming. And, you know, if McDonald's doesn't have anything to hide, why not just come out and tell the truth? On another level, I find it very interesting. Like, I want to know how a McRib gets made. I want to know, how does the chicken McNugget get made? I want to know that there are 4 shapes of McNugget. I think you're going to see a lot more of this, not just in restaurants or fast food, but across all kind of marketing categories as the years go on. There's a general interest in how things are done operationally with food. How is it cooked? How is it sourced? And I think it's great. I think it will help McDonald's. And another point I'll make, which you kind of touched on, but I'll reiterate, is, listen, I know my Big Mac or my Quarter Pounder or my McRib is not the greatest quality meat in the world, and that's why it costs $4. If I wanted great meat and a great burger, I'd go to a nice restaurant and pay $15. I think most people out there know that it's not great meat. I think there's a vocal minority who are convinced that McDonald's is doing some nefarious thing behind the scenes, injecting the pink slime, which, hey, I'm not saying that they're saints. They're not 100% on the up and up. I'm sure there are some things that aren't great, but hey, for the most part, they're doing their best to make a low-cost, quality enough product for everyone out there. So, hey, I'm all for it.
When I saw this beforehand and then afterwards, I felt the same way. I felt like, for McDonald's part, this idea was equal parts brave, risky, stupid, and manipulative. And I also thought it was McDonald's only move at this point. They've added salads. They've added apples and milk to the Happy Meals. They're pushing the kids to be active. They're doing everything that they can in the midst of this environment that we're living in right now. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that fast food restaurants are going to find themselves in the same place tobacco found themselves in 20 years ago. I used to think that was a ridiculous statement. Now I truly believe it. And so McDonald's is not just being smart. They're doing what they have to do to survive at this point. And to get mildly political for a second, some of the skeptics, they say, oh, government should be putting so much pressure on places like this. But the government's only reflecting, in my opinion, what society wants to look at this point. And I do think people are interested in learning these kind of details. And so for the people who are maybe on the side of the needle that are skeptical, this might move some of them. Not all of them. The people who are on the far will never be convinced. But you brought up another less controversial aspect of this that I hadn't considered, and this will appeal to the fans, the actual loyalists. They don't need convincing, but this certainly reinforces it as a fan of McDonald's. It's enjoyable to learn these fun little details about the food. And so it works on both of those levels.
Yeah, they're like little documentaries, you know. Like I said, the McNugget infographic was interesting. I found it appealing and easy to read. The videos were interesting. You know, the Filet-O-Fish video was a little fluffy, but for the most part, I think, you know, it's interesting stuff. It's the reason that MythBusters became such a hit is because, you know, people are interested in how things work and how science works, and why not McDonald's? Why not just, you know, lift this veil of secrecy? And the more forthright and direct a brand or a business can be, I think it's great.
Okay, so I urge our listeners to take a look at the website for themselves and make their own opinions. Let us know what you think. We really only scratched the surface. I think we hit the major chunks that are in there, but they've got other portions where they really are directly taking the questions of people, both fans and skeptics, and answering them. They posted up there someone asking the question, you know, does your food have lips and bones in it? They also posted and responded to the question, why is the McRib seasonal? And while they made a clever little video out of it, the essential reason was it's more special if they don't keep it on the menu full time. Kind of one of those legendary questions that people joke about. So they're playing it both for straight and for fun. Check it out for yourself. Let us know what you think. This is our first Hungry Dad special report, and we will be bringing you more of these in the future.
Hungry Dads! Visit our website at hungrydads.com. Follow us on Twitter at hungry_dads. This has been a Hungry Dads production. Doesn't always have to be crazy.